In all sorts of sectors and industries, outsourcing is a popular option. And so if you're watching this video, you may be wondering, does outsourcing apply to surrogacy also? So stick around, and in this video, we're going to cover what is international surrogacy. What's up? I'm Corlendos Scott, and I'm a surrogacy attorney based out of Los Angeles. So my practice revolves around helping people grow their family through surrogacy. In this video, we're going to cover a few things. First, we'll talk about domestic versus international surrogacy. We'll discuss some pros and cons, and we'll also talk about some risks and legal implications. Let's dive in. So let's talk about the difference between domestic surrogacy and international surrogacy. Domestic surrogacy refers to an arrangement, or a surrogacy arrangement specifically, involving a surrogate and intended parents both located in the same country. They may be in different states within that country, but both parties are in the same country. So for instance, you may have intended parents from New York engaging an agency in California with a surrogate either from California or maybe even Texas or another state in the US. That would still be considered a domestic surrogacy arrangement. And for our purposes, an international surrogacy arrangement is a surrogacy arrangement involving either a surrogate who lives overseas or in a country outside of the US, working with intended parents from the US, or intended parents from a country outside of the US, working with a surrogate, an agency, a doctor within the United States. So for instance, there's a set of intended parents from a European country or an Asian country seeking IVF treatments in the US, and they engage an agency in California or in Iowa or in Florida, and they're working with a surrogate in another state in the US. That would be an international surrogacy. So the question around international surrogacy arrangements many times is, should I do it? If I'm based in the US, should I explore surrogacy abroad, as they say? Well, we just really have to weigh the pros and cons. Now, obviously, I'm going to be biased towards surrogacy, IVF, assisted reproduction arrangements in the United States because I am a surrogacy professional based in the United States. But I'll try as much as I can to be a little objective here and kind of see what those differences are. Now, one of the pros that I think exists with doing a surrogacy arrangement in the United States is the transparency of expenses, the cost. So it is such a common thing in the United States, with states throughout the US allowing and supporting surrogacy arrangements in their laws, that they are very clear on the costs, very clear on the process, very clear on the procedures. So you really know what you're getting. I can't really speak for another country. I'm familiar with people who have explored surrogacy in countries like Georgia, Ukraine, even Mexico, also India. But from what I understand, in their experience, it wasn't as cut and dry an experience as far as what the costs were and knowing exactly what they were getting into. So if you are exploring surrogacy internationally, make sure that that's something that you can hold your professional's feet to the fire on. Exactly what am I paying for, and what does that payment breakdown look like? Another pro for engaging in surrogacy stateside is, in my opinion, the medical screenings and the medical procedures and standards. One of the other benefits of the US's system is the fact that the FDA has a list of guidelines for donors. ASRM, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, has a list of guidelines for surrogates. So there are actual guidelines in our system, as well as guidelines in some state laws about what is necessary in order to go through a surrogacy process, that it makes it very transparent as to what is allowed and what is not allowed when you're trying to grow your family through surrogacy. And of course, I have to mention the legal side of things. And that is also really, I give the US kind of mixed marks on this one, because there are some places in the US that are great for surrogacy legally, and there's some places that are not great. And if you've watched more than one video, you've heard me harp on that. So I'll just say that it is, though, very clear that the places in the US that allow for it, you know what you're getting into. You shouldn't be surprised by anything because everything's right there in the open. It's written down in the law. You can just Google it and read it. However, in some states, and when I say states, I mean nation states, there aren't laws, and it's really the Wild West. So while you may be saving a lot in the way of expenses medically with the matching process and even what you're paying your surrogate, you may be losing it in the way of standards, medical standards, and the laws protecting you as a parent. I'm not saying that there's any other state that is worse than the U.S. or that the U.S. is better than everyone else, but I just know what you're getting in some states in the U.S. So make sure that if you're going to engage in surrogacy abroad, you know exactly what you're getting. Know what you're getting in the ways of, do the laws protect you as a parent? Know what you're getting with medical standards. Know what you're getting in the way of immigration. Will you be able to take your child out of that country and bring it into the U.S.? So just make sure you know what you're getting. Let's also talk about the risks of international surrogacy. But before we do, if you are looking for a specific place to start your surrogacy journey and you're wondering what states in the U.S. are friendly to surrogacy and what states aren't, go check out my video on what states ban surrogacy so you can get the skinny on where you probably should or shouldn't explore surrogacy arrangements. Now, when we talk about the risks of international surrogacy, it's really going to harken back to some of the things that I said to you when we were looking at the pros versus cons. So for instance, you want to look at the political relationship of the two nation states or countries. So if you're from country A and you're thinking of doing a surrogacy arrangement in country B, make sure that you're not going to a country that your home country is in a current conflict with. That will definitely make things more difficult. Also, make sure you understand the applicable family laws between those countries, your home country and the country that you're going to engage in surrogacy in. Make sure that you know the laws about adoption and surrogacy and legal parentage and citizenship and all of those things, because that might affect your ability to get your child out of that country, again, and into your country. Now, here is one reason that many people choose or opt for surrogacy outside of the U.S., and that's financial reasons. And when you think about the financial risks, they are substantial in the US because it is not a cheap process at all. So you have to think about the medical procedures, finances around immigration, finances around travel costs, finances around legal representation, and there's even other considerations outside of that. But there are a number of considerations. Just because you're engaging in surrogacy outside the US, don't think that you'll 100% save money. I've seen people do arrangements outside the US and end up paying as much in legal representation to deal with immigration issues as they would have just going through a surrogacy arrangement stateside. So just be careful. Another risk is surrounding the health of the surrogate and your baby. We're not just thinking about having a cost-efficient or cheap, if you will, surrogacy arrangement, because you have to also think that your baby is going to be gestating in that environment. So you want to make sure that the level of the surrogate's medical care is top-notch wherever you engage in surrogacy. So think about the medical screening process. Is it as rigorous as it would be stateside? Is it more rigorous maybe? Make sure that you're putting your child in the best position to be born healthy. And last but not least, you have to think about the legal status of becoming a parent where you're engaging in the surrogacy process. There are some places that do not allow for same-sex marriages and therefore definitely don't allow for same-sex parentage. Places like China. You have to consider that if you're thinking about going outside of the U.S. to engage in surrogacy. You have to think about, does the country or the nation state that you're considering engaging in surrogacy, do they require a biological relationship? Do they require marriage? Is there some kind of custody specifics that you don't meet? Make sure you understand this before you just save a little money and go outside of the country. Another thing to keep in mind is that cultures differ at various places throughout the world. So just because you view a certain issue from a certain set of lenses doesn't mean that people in another part of the world view things the same way. So why I mention that is because when a surrogate is in a country that you're not a citizen of and she's carrying your baby, it does not mean that she'll necessarily carry the baby in a way that fits with your life perspective. So if that is something that you're not concerned about, then it may be a sign towards embarking or exploring a surrogacy journey in a different country. But if you are very staunch in your beliefs and you're very rigorous about how you want pregnancies to proceed, then you may want to consider that if you are going outside of the U.S. for a journey, that you find a place with a culture that shares your point of view. There's a ton of different considerations when you're thinking about doing a surrogacy journey, whether that's internationally or domestically. But just know that there are pros and cons to each thing, and before you pull the trigger and decide exactly what to do, you sit down and speak with someone who can talk through all of the various considerations so that you go in with your eyes wide open. If you're looking for help on how to grow your family through surrogacy and you're wondering where do I start, I have something for you. It's a free gift. I call it my 3T framework, and it's really how I set up my clients for surrogacy success. So if you want that, just click the link below and you'll get my 3T framework. And that's really just the 3 things that are most important in the surrogacy journey. If you don't have these 3 things, you're destined to fail. So go ahead and click that link below. Get it. It's free, and it'll help you get started on your journey to growing your family through surrogacy.